شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك لبيك اللهم لبيك.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وآله. Respected elders, scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. In our discussion about the preparation for Hajj, which is a duty once in a lifetime on all of mankind towards God, for those amongst us who are able to undertake this journey. And ability has been defined as somebody who is physically able, financially capable, and also the trip is possible for him. Then it becomes wajib to perform this Hajjatul Islam. And Hajjatul Islam has to be performed according to the model that has been set by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he instructed the Ummah to perform Hajj for those of us who are not staying in Mecca or near Mecca up to a particular distance, for those of us who come from afar. Then the Hajjatul Islam is composed of two parts, the Umrah Tamattu' and the Hajj Tamattu'. Tamattu', because there's a type of mut'a in this. Mut'a meaning that the permission to enjoy certain pleasures which become restricted in the state of ihram. So there is an ihram for the lesser pilgrimage, the Umrah, and there is an ihram for the greater pilgrimage, the Hajj Tamattu'. In between the Umrah Tamattu' and the Hajj Tamattu', you come out of the ihram of the lesser pilgrimage. You are in a state of ihlal, where it's halal for you to be able to enjoy again the restrictions that were placed because of ihram. And then again you enter into another ihram for the bigger pilgrimage, the Hajj Tamattu'. This Umrah Tamattu', we are required to travel to the holy city of Mecca in Masjid al-Haram, around the Kaaba. There are 7 rounds, the tawaf of Umrah Tamattu', and after that the Salatul Tawaf behind Maqam Ibrahim for the Umrah Tamattu', and the Sa'i between Safa and Marwa, 7 rounds, and then Taqsir, which is a process of coming out of Ihram. But none of these is valid till we enter into the state of Ihram. In order to enter into the state of Ihram, we have to travel to the beginning point of this journey, which is the place outside the holy city of Medina, where the Holy Prophet ﷺ started his journey, known as the Miqat, the Masjid Shajara. So we have discussed the 3 wajib acts that need to be performed to enter into the state of Ihram. One is the removal of the stitched dress for the males and to wear the 2 pieces of the unstitched dress, and number 2, for women to wear that dress which is valid for salah, and number 2, to make the niyyah, and number 3, then to declare the talbiyah. So now we are into the state of ihram at the miqat. Now we can proceed on our journey to the holy city of Mecca. But once we enter into the state of ihram, by definition, ihram means for the sake of Hajj, for the sake of traveling to the Haram, for the sake of traveling to Masjid al-Haram, for the sake of visiting the house of God, certain acts become haram. So we need to remind ourselves what those acts are. In the Holy Quran, there is a reference to this state in Surah Baqarah, ayah number 197, Al-Hajju Ashhurun Ma'lumat. Hajj can only be performed in the specific designated time period, which is the month of Shawwal, Zi-Qa'dah, and Zi-Hijjah. So we can enter into the ihram for Umrah Tamattu any time beginning from Shawwal. But for Hajj Tamattu, we have to wait till the 7th of Zi-Hijjah, the 8th of Zi-Hijjah rather, and we proceed to Mina, Arafah, Muzdalifah, and back to Mina. So Hajj has got a specific time period. فَمَنْ فَرَضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجَّ. So whosoever in this specific time period, from the specific designated place, the miqat, enters into ihram and makes Hajj applicable and obligatory on himself, then in the state of ihram, فَلَا رَفَثَ وَلَا فُسُوقَ وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ. In this state of ihram for Hajj, the bigger Hajj, the smaller Hajj, there are certain restrictions. Of those restrictions, 3 have been mentioned in the Quran. La rafatha, no sexual contact. La fusuqa, no sinful transgression, which has been defined particularly in the riwayah, which we'll discuss. Wala jidala, and no argumentation in the state of ihram, which again has been defined in a specific way. Once we are in that state of ihram, then Allah says, so now you are in a state of discipline and restraint and self-control. You have to avoid several things. وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ يَعْلَمْهُ اللَّهُ. Now in this state of being an invited visitor, pilgrim to the house of God, and for the sake of God, you are going to avoid certain acts. Therefore, you are enabled to do good acts. Whatever good you do now, Allah knows it, Allah will record it, and therefore Allah will reward you. So try to do as much good as you can. وَتَزَوَّدُوا. And more important is, remember this trip, though it's a physical trip, but there is a spiritual dimension to it. And that is the preparation for the final trip that we will make to meet our Lord in the akhirah. This is the meeting of the Lord in the dunya as a preparation for meeting the Lord in the akhirah. وَتَزَوَّدُوا. And therefore take your provisions. In as much as for this physical trip you need to take physical provisions, for that spiritual trip you need to take the spiritual provisions. فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. And the best of the provisions for that trip of akhirah is taqwa, God mindfulness. How do I get God mindfulness if that is the best of the provisions and I don't arrive in the presence of God empty-handed? The best way is this state of ihram, taqwa, God mindfulness, God consciousness, to have that heightened alertness to one's sense of duty and responsibility and sense of obedience to God. That's taqwa. So, based on the riwayat of the sunnah of the Prophet, as explained by the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, these restrictions that apply in the state of ihram, 3 have been mentioned in the Quran, but in the riwayat there is a total of 25 or 26 depending on how you count them. For the sake of convenience, I have tried to alphabetize it. So one way of remembering those 25, 26 restrictions that apply in the state of ihram is to categorize them into groups. So group A, I call it the apparel or the dress. Group B, restrictions about the beautification. Group C, restrictions about contact with the members of the opposite sex. Group D, defense and carrying arms, for example. And group E, the ethical qualities like avoiding quarreling. So let me explain the details of each group. Group A, the restrictions that apply to the apparel, the dress. So for men, they're not allowed to wear stitched dress. They must have unstitched dress. For women, the restriction is they must only wear the stitched dress permissible in salah. Apparel also refers to the covering of the feet. For males, the footwear has to be a particular type. For females, covering of the face not allowed. For males, covering of the head not allowed. For males, taking shade not allowed. So these are restrictions in the group A, apparel. Restrictions in the group B, beautification, is to apply perfume, to look into the mirror, to use oil and cream, to perform any act of self-beautification. Group C, restrictions about contact with members of the opposite sex. So no looking with lust, no touching, and any other lustful behavior beyond touching. Group D, I call it the defense activities, carrying arms, removing blood, plucking hair, cutting off the nails, removal of the tooth, hurting insects, or hunting animals. We could categorize them in group D. And finally, group E, ethical, meaning that no lying permissible in the state of ihram, no quarrelsome, argumentative discussions and swearing in the name of God. So let's look into more details about these restrictions. So group A, the dress and the cover that is restricted in the state of ihram. Already I spoke about entering into ihram for the males, that you have to remove the stitched dress, wear the unstitched dress. A little clarification. It's not that any type of stitched material is not allowed. Stitched material, which is a dress, which has buttons stitched onto it, which has sleeves stitched onto it, or the lower part of the body which has the trouser portion stitched onto it, that type of stitched material not allowed. But let's say somebody has got a belt on his hand, a wrist watch belt which is stitched, no problem. That is not considered to be a dress. Or a belt which is stitched but which is used for the purpose of securing the valuables, maybe money or keys or any other valuable. No problem, allowed. Though if it is without any necessary use, then it's makruh, not haram, to wear such a belt. To cover oneself with a stitched cloth. So let's say you have a blanket whose edges are stitched, or you have a bed sheet whose edges are stitched. No problem. That is not wearing a stitched dress. That is just covering yourself with it. The shoulder cloth not only should not be stitched, you're not allowed to tie a knot to secure the two open ends of the ihram. However, a pin is allowed to secure the two edges of the ihram for the shoulder cloth. And for the loin cloth, obviously, you don't need a pin to secure. Loin cloth, the volunteers will demonstrate in a later session how to wear the loin cloth ihram in such a way that you don't even need a belt to secure yourself. You can wear it in such a way it becomes even tighter than a belt on your body. So you don't need to use even a pin for that. And one important reminder is that obviously the material and the textile of the cloth should be such that it should cover, it should not be transparent and display the skin underneath. This is a serious restriction in that if anybody violates it and wears a stitched dress, then there's a penalty and a kafara to be paid for it. However, other stitched material for males, gloves allowed, mask which could be stitched allowed. If the ihram has a brand label stitched onto it, a small portion allowed. Somebody has got some body part which needs support and he has tied a bandage which could be stitched, no problem, allowed. So smaller items which don't act as a dress, if they are stitched, no problem. What is restricted is a full stitched dress. For women, however, though for the sake of hijab, stitched dress is allowed, but gloves are not allowed. Mask is not allowed. But that's a special restriction. We'll discuss it when we come to the facial cover. The second restriction of apparel is the footwear. For the females, no problem. They can wear socks, they can wear shoes, they can cover their whole feet in the state of ihram, no problem. Or they can leave it open, no problem, so long as they are amongst their own ladies or they are amongst the mahram men, they can keep their feet open. But if they are in front of mahram men, then they must cover their feet with socks. But for males in the state of ihram, no footwear is allowed which covers the top of the foot fully. So socks not allowed, shoes not allowed. However, slippers which expose the toes and expose the part of the upper foot, no problem, that is permissible. However, if somebody is sitting down and his ihram then covers his top part of the foot, that is no problem. That is not wearing the ihram on the foot. That is just the ihram dress being long enough to cover. Again, this is a serious restriction. Somebody who purposely wears fully covering sandals or shoes or socks amongst the males, there's a penalty to be paid, which is a sheep. So if, God forbid, you came with the right footwear, the slippers or the sandals where the upper portion was open, but it got mixed up, it got lost, it got stolen, God forbid. Now you're stuck. The other pair that you have is a sandal or a shoe that has got a total covering of the top part of the foot. No excuse, sorry. Make sure you can find something to cut open the upper portion of the sandal or of the shoes or whatever other footwear that you have, so that part of the foot, upper portion of the foot is exposed. A third restriction in the category of the apparel and the dress is the covering of the head for the males. Covering of the head for the females is wajib, is part of hijab. But for males, covering of the head in the state of ihram, not allowed. So be it by a stitched cap or a shawl or even the ihram, and you raise it and cover your head, not allowed. Full head cover not allowed, partial head cover not allowed. And incidentally, in the state of ihram, the head rule extends to the ear also. So ear cover also not allowed in the state of ihram. Ear cover Maybe somebody may say that I'm traveling and the wind is blowing, I just want to protect my ear. No, you can't do that. Unless, of course, there's a medical reason. Medical reasons are exceptions. The normal, average, healthy, able-bodied person can tolerate, can endure the flow and the blow of the wind on the ear. No, they must sustain it. Problem is this gadget. In the state of ihram, if you get a phone call, remember the rule says no covering of the head. Full cover of the head or part of the head. Full ear or part of the ear. Full time, part time. Hello. Samahani, pay $100 for this hello. Because there's a sheep as a penalty for deliberately. Somebody does it forgetfully, Allah forgives. Purposely. The ear is covered, even temporarily, then there is a penalty to be paid for that. What about, we'll have a night journey from, after entering into ihram at the miqat in Masjid Shajara, after Maghribain prayers, almost 450 kilometers journey to Makkah at the speed of, let's say, 100 kilometers per hour. It'll take minimum 4 or 5 hours. So you'll doze off in the bus, or you'll rest your head on the headrest of the seat of the bus. Is that not covering part of the head? No, sleeping is no problem. Or you can't sleep suspended in the air. You'll have to sleep on the pillow, even when you go to Arafat and Muzdalifah and Mina. Or you want to rest in the bus, no problem. That much covering of the head is permissible. Problem is when during ihram you go and wash yourself, your head for example, it's very hot, you have to cool yourself, and then now your head is wet and you want to dry the head, and in the process of drying you take a towel or a tissue or whatever to dry. No, not allowed, because remember, full cover of the head not allowed, part of the head not allowed, full time cover not allowed, part-time covering of the head also not allowed. The only one situation that can be a difficulty is in case you need to do wudu. So for some reason instead of wudu you went and washed yourself, your whole body, now your head is wet and you need to make masah after the wash. So the way to do that is you need to dry your head, that portion of the head which is required for the masah, the minimum part of the head, the top part of the head which is required for the masah is 1 finger breadth and 1 finger length. This much portion, if you do your masah, that's the minimum and that's acceptable. So what you do basically is dry your hand, let's say, your palm, dry it up, and then dry this much portion of the head, and then make your masah. If the time is running out. If time is not running out, sit under the sun, and within a few minutes you'll dry up and bake. For women, facial cover not allowed. We'll discuss that. But for males, facial cover, no problem. Remember, the restriction of covering of the head is only the top of the head where the hair grows and the ear, but you can cover the face. So let's say you're sitting in the bus and the light is on and it's disturbing you, you can take your ihram and cover your face, no problem. That is allowed. But for women, covering of the face, not allowed. Covering of the head, wajib, should be covered. The rule of covering of the face for women is wearing a burqa or wearing a niqab, any facial cover, whether it is the whole of the face or most of the face, or part of the face, not allowed. Full cover, partial cover. Face must remain open in the state of ihram for women. The only two situations where a woman is allowed to cover partly or fully her face, one situation is salah. Salah, there's a special hijab which is required for salah, which is that the head should be covered, the ears up till the neck. So let's say the woman is in the state of ihram and amongst other women, so she can keep her head open, but for the sake of salah she'll have to cover her head. But covering of the head means that the hairline, beginning from that, it should be covered. In order to make sure you have covered the hairline, the scarf, the head cover should go a little below. That means cover part of the face. The head scarf should come part of the sides of the face. The head scarf should come above the chin to ensure that the whole area required to be covered for the sake of salah is covered. So basically here a woman is caught between two options. The options of keeping her face fully open for the sake of ihram versus the option of covering part of her face for the sake of salah. Salah more important, and therefore temporarily for the period and duration of salah, she covers her face partly. Once the salah is finished, the scarf is withdrawn from all sides. So that's one exception for the covering of the face. The second exception for the covering of the face is, God forbid, she finds herself in a situation where she is afraid that mahram will look at her with lustful eyes, and therefore she feels insecure. That is a permissible reason for her to cover her face. Otherwise, the face must remain open. In fact, we have hadith which says that Imam Baqir alayhi salam saw some woman covering her face. So Imam took his rod and moved the niqab away from her face and told her that innaki in tanaqabti, if you wear this niqab, lam yataghayyar lawnuki, then the complexion and the color of your face will not change because of the sun. So exposure to the sun in the state of ihram required, in as much as exposure of the head to the sun required for males. What if a woman has worn a hijab or a long upper dress and she wants to remove it, and in the process of removal the face is covered? No, for that situation, that temporary superficial covering is permissible. What if a woman wants to sleep, but sleep on her face, side of the face or even front of the face, let's say? No problem. Sleep is an exception, in as much as males are allowed to cover their head, part of the head, by resting on the pillow, allowed. So also women allowed to cover part of their face for sleep. Somebody wants to clean their face and blow their nose, and they want to use, they are respectful and courteous in the presence of others, so they want to use a handkerchief. No problem, that's a necessity, allowed. Mask, not allowed. What about if the face is wet after the shower or after washing the face in the state of ihram, and the woman wishes to dry her face and she takes the towel and covers her face to dry it? No, not allowed. In addition to the restriction of face cover, hand cover also for women not allowed. Gloves which cover the fingers and the wrist up till the lower part of the arm, not allowed in the state of ihram. For males, no problem. Gloves is permissible. One final restriction in the apparel for males is taking shade of the sun. For women, taking shade of the sun, no problem in the state of ihram. For males, it is haram. Obviously, nighttime there is no sun. So nighttime shade, according to Hazrat al-Sistani, allowed. According to Marumatul Khoi, not allowed to take shade even at night. However, sunshade which is restricted is only during the time of traveling. So, in the state of ihram for Umrah Tamattu', we shall not be traveling during the daytime, so that should not be a problem. When we arrive at our destination in Makkah, once you're in the destination, then you're allowed to take shade, no problem. Because now you've arrived in your temporary home and you're moving from one part of the home to another part of the home. In Makkah, no problem. You can take shade once in Makkah. However, Marhum Ayatollah Khoi allows it only in the old city of Makkah. Hazrat al-Sistani makes ihtiyat that from your building in Makkah all the way to the Masjid al-Haram. No, he says, ihtiyat wajib, you should not take shade. So those of us who will be in the state of ihram, once we arrive in Makkah, in the ihram for Umrah Tamattu', and we wish to go from the building to Masjid al-Haram, if it is during daytime, be careful, don't take shade. And these are strict restrictions which require a penalty to be paid if somebody violates it without excuse. However, if somebody says that the car is shaded, no car shade allowed in the state of ihram for males, from, according to Hazrat Ayatollah Khoi, even during nighttime. So, from the miqat to Makkah, the bus that is available by the government or by private renting is a bus which is shaded. Unshaded buses are not available. Then that becomes a justifiable excuse, no problem. You can travel under the shade even in the night time. But because this restriction is so important and you are violating it, there must be a penalty to be paid. It's not sinful because you have no excuse. You have a justifiable excuse. So it's not sinful. But because it's a serious restriction, there's a penalty to be paid for this. Taking shade of a fellow passenger, no problem. So you're moving from your building to Masjid al-Haram. It is during daytime. The sun is already up and there is a building and you're passing under the shade of the building, no problem allowed. You can't remove the building for your sake. There's a tree, there is a tunnel, no problem. Those types of fixed, immovable shades, no problem allowed. What is not allowed is a movable shade. So you can't carry an umbrella and go to the Masjid al-Haram in the state of ihram. Under the shade restriction, rains also apply. So if it starts to rain, be it daytime, so let's say it's cloudy, there's no sun. So if there's no sun, there's no problem, you can take a shade. But because it's cloudy, it starts to rain. You cannot take shade from the rain, be it the fatwa of Marhumatul Khoi or Hazrat al-Sistani. In fact, all mujtahids say that no shade from the rain not allowed in the state of ihram. So it happened once that one of the buses with the pilgrims from Masjid Shajara to Makkah, because the timings were different, or maybe the day was different. On that night, it started to rain for a short while. So once you know it's raining, you have to tell the bus driver to stop, because now it's not allowed to take shade off the bus during night time from rain. Of course, it depends on the situation. Sometimes the driver may say, "Samahani, I cannot stop middle of the way. I am under strict traffic regulations. In fact, if I do stop, the police are going to penalize me. In fact, I'm a temporary driver who has been called to come for Hajj and to serve the pilgrims. They'll arrest me and they'll deport me, so I can't break the law." Sawa, that is a justifiable excuse for continuing to stay under the shade despite the rain. But if you have control and the driver is hired by you and you're paying for the charges, then the driver should listen to you. The driver must stop till the rain stops, and then you can continue your travel. These are the basic restrictions about the apparel and the cover and the shade. Next is self-beautification. But before I go to that, any questions, any clarifications? Yes, please.
If the driver doesn't stop at the time of rain,
Yes. The shade rule is strict, and let's say a person is sick, he is sensitive to the sun, or she is sensitive to the sun. But for women it doesn't apply. The man, he's got some skin sensitivity, so he can't expose himself to the sun. So he's allowed to take shade. It's not sinful. But because the restriction is so important, he has to pay a penalty. So if for a justifiable excuse and reason a person takes shade, there is a kafara for that. However, if the bus stops, you don't necessarily need to get off the bus. The bus should stop, that's all. But if the bus is moving and you're traveling and you've taken a shade, not allowed. So I go to the next category, and that is self-beautification. I have included under self-beautification even nail trimming and nail cutting. But this rule of nail trimming and nail cutting does not apply in the Umrah Tamattu', because it is mustahab to trim your nails before you enter into Ihram for Umrah Tamattu'. And then Umrah Tamattu', you will enter into Ihram, let's say the time of Maghrib, you will arrive in Mecca before Fajr, and by Dhuhr time, maximum by Maghrib time next day, you would have come out of Ihram by finishing the taqsir. I don't think so within 24 hours your nails will have grown big enough for you to want to trim them or cut them. I'm skipping it for now. But when we discuss the Ihram for Hajj Tamattu', yes, we will be in that Ihram for several days, beginning from the 7th or the 8th of Zulhijjah, 9th, 10th afternoon, you can come out of Ihram. So that's a couple of days. Maybe the nail gets injured, maybe the nail needs to be trimmed. That rule will apply at that time. So I'm skipping it for the moment. Another restriction for self-beautification is removal of hair, or cutting of hair, or trimming of hair. The restrictions, according to all mujtahids and all mazhabs of the Muslims, is that any type of hair removal from anyone not allowed in the state of Ihram. Any type of hair removal, meaning not necessarily trimming and shaving, but even pulling and plucking, not allowed. And from anyone not allowed in the state of Ihram. So the pilgrim cannot remove it from himself, and the restriction is so serious, the pilgrim cannot even remove hair from somebody else, be that somebody else another pilgrim in the state of Ihram, or a pilgrim who is out of state of Ihram. Hair removal not allowed by anyone, by any which way in the state of ihram. However, if accidentally it falls, so you are changing your ihram dress, adjusting your ihram dress, and body hair falls off. Or you're making wudu or ghusl, which is allowed. And mustahab to do ghusl once you arrive at the haram, mustahab to do ghusl. You're going to Masjid al-Haram, mustahab to do ghusl. You're going for tawaf, mustahab to do ghusl. So you did ghusl. At the time of ghusl, some hair falls off. That is no problem. Wudu, hair falls off, no problem. No, you have a habit of adjusting your beard or setting your hair. Should be avoided. So long as you are not sure that by adjusting your hair or combing your hair, combing is allowed. Unless you're absolutely sure but that by combing, hair will fall off, then no, that's not allowed. In that case, you just gently set your hair. Or incidentally, it is mustahab to let your hair grow before Hajj. And if you have had a trim, then when you go for the Umrah, stop trimming your hair till you reach the day of Eid, when you shall shave the hair of the head. So accidental, unplanned removal of hair or fall of hair is permissible. Again, this is a serious restriction. Somebody who shaves his head in the state of ihram, there's a whole sheep to be paid, which is almost $100. Another restriction in the state of ihram is the application of oil. Oil in the past, in the desert climate, was necessary to keep the skin supple and fresh and moist, and to prevent dryness of the skin. And of course, it was also used for beautification purpose. So oil or creams, oil-based creams, cannot be used in the state of ihram, haram. What about eating oil? How can you eat food without oil? No problem. Eating oily food, allowed. However, if the oil is perfumed, let's say perfumed specifically here, meaning there's za'faran in the oil, then no. The oil is allowed, it's the perfumed oil which is not allowed. Unless, of course, the oil has got its own natural good fragrance, there's no problem. We can eat that oily food, oil-cooked food. Application of oil or cream, therefore, not allowed if not necessary. But let's say somebody suffers, they've got a sensitive skin, it's an extremely hot, dry weather, and dry skin cracks, bleeds, uncomfortable, itches, and he feels like scratching himself or herself, then no. For medical reasons, no problem. Oil-based creams allowed, lip moisturizers allowed, glycerine allowed, Vaseline allowed. However, these oil-based creams, you have to be careful, should not be perfumed. If it's perfumed, look for a non-perfumed oil-based cream. If you cannot find it and you need to use it for medical purposes, then it is not sinful because it's unavoidable. But you have to pay a kafara because of the perfume. What if somebody says, I'm not suffering as yet, cracked skin, dry skin, but I know from past experience that if I don't apply the cream beforehand, I will suffer and it will become inconvenient and difficult and uncomfortable for me. Sawa, as a preventive measure, no problem, allowed, but be careful, it should not be perfumed. Another act of self-beautification which is not allowed in the state of ihram is to look into the mirror. All the Shia mujtahids, all the Muslim mazhabs also say the same. Looking into the mirror for the sake of self-beautification in the state of ihram, not allowed. So what if somebody says, I want to look into the mirror, but not for self-beautification purpose. I'm looking into the mirror because he is a driver and he needs to see the traffic behind. Or no, I want to perform wudu and there may be something on my face which could be blocking the water from reaching the skin of the face for wudu, and I want to remove that. It's not purpose of self-beautification, no problem. That is allowed. So long as looking into the mirror is not for self-beautification, no problem. What if somebody says, I don't look into the mirror. I'm looking into a reflective glass. Reflective glass can show my face a temporary hazy picture of myself. Is that allowed or not? Here there's a difference of opinion. Marhum Ayatollah Khoy says, no problem, you're allowed to look at a non-mirror reflective surface. Hazrat Ayatollah Sistani says, no, not allowed to look at any reflective surface. And therefore, you will notice that the three places where you will be faced with a mirror is once you enter into the bus or once you arrive in the building. In Mecca, the bathroom, the lift, they may have mirrors. So that's the test. Be careful to avoid looking at yourself. Accidental, unplanned look, no problem. It's not sinful. It's the second look now, where you want to see yourself better and adjust yourself. That is not allowed. It is haram. And if somebody violates it, there's no specific penalty. You just make istighfar. Some mujtahids say it is mustahab to recite the talbiyah once again. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. It's not wajib to say labbaik. Wajib labbaik is only once. At the miqat, when you entering into ihram, at that time labbaik is wajib. After that, labbaik is not wajib, it is mustahab. In some cases more so, for example, when the violation of looking into the mirror has taken place, there is no payment of sheep. Marhum Ayatollah Khoy rahmatullah alayhi says, mustahab, you should pay a sheep as a kafara for purposely looking into the mirror for self-beautification. Let me stop here. One final message. Once we are into the state of ihram, we are required to be in a state of high alertness, awareness, sensitivity, sense of responsibility. I'm becoming a guest of God. God is going to become my host. He is going to show me hospitality. But for His hospitality, I need to qualify. And the way to qualify is to avoid these restrictions. And therefore, in order to keep that state of mind, alertness, awareness, I am now not free to do whatever I want. I'm a guest. I'm a slave. I am a special, privileged, invited servant of God. Mustahab, therefore, to keep on reciting labbaik. From the time of entering into ihram in miqat, all the way till you reach your destination, and that is Mecca. The moment you start seeing the buildings of Mecca, you stop reciting labbaik. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, wajib, first time. After that, mustahab. Innal hamda wal ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika laka labbaik, the fifth labbaik, mustahab. But first time wajib. Afterwards, you can recite labbaik Allahumma labbaik, 2 times labbaik. Or 4 times labbaik. Labbaik la sharika laka labbaik. Or the 5th labbaik. Mustahab. You can lengthen it, you can make it medium, you can shorten it. Labbaik Allahumma. Enough, no problem. Mustahab. The important thing is that this should induce in us a state of mind whereby we are consciously preparing ourselves to become the guests of God. Any questions, any clarifications? Some pilgrims yesterday told me that they are a little worried about the pronunciation of the qira'ah of Fatiha and the surah and the labbaik, because if it is done wrongly, then the Hajj can become batil. There is salatul tawaf. So we've requested Ustaz Musa. He's a qualified qari of the Quran. He'll spend a few minutes just giving us a practice of the labbaik, of the Fatiha, of the surah. And then privately, individually, if you wish to sit with him and get yourself corrected, all the better, inshaAllah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Sasa tutasoma suratul Fatiha. Mimi nasoma na mimi nifuata. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك